My name is Lyndon Bittle. I'm a partner at Carrington, Coleman, Sloman, and Blumenthal in Dallas, Texas. Our client was a man named Manuel Velez, and he had, when we got involved at the end of 2008, he had been convicted in October of that year of the capital murder of a one-year-old child in Brownsville, Texas. Everyone who had the opportunity to read the transcript of this trial came away with a very strong impression that we weren't sure at that point whether or not Manuel was innocent, but we knew he had not gotten a fair trial. And largely, from the standpoint of reading the transcript, he had not gotten good representation. There were questions that his defense counsel just didn't ask, and that caused us to begin to dig further. And well, maybe he's innocent, and not only should he not be executed, he should not be in prison at all. It was clear that this child had suffered some very serious head injuries, but what wasn't clear was the time frame in which the injuries had been inflicted. The theory on which he was convicted was that because our client was present on the day that the child went into respiratory arrest and then couldn't breathe and ultimately died, and he had been living with the mother of the child for the last 2 weeks, that all of the child's injuries had occurred within that 2-week period, and they quickly culminated in his death. And what we came to learn was that this child had suffered injuries over a much longer period of time, and that his most serious head injuries, which had caused some internal bleeding, a subdural hematoma in his skull, had certainly occurred before the 2-week time period that he had been living with the child. What really turned the corner and convinced us that that was absolutely the case. We met with this doctor in his office in Pennsylvania, 2 of us, and presented his report to him, and first just asked him to explain what he meant by the words he had written in the document, without telling me anything about the controversy or anything. We just wanted as straight an answer from him as possible. He said that his description of these membranes and the condition of the tissues meant that we were looking at an injury that had been inflicted somewhere between 2 weeks and 6 months of this one-year-old child's death. At that point, we knew that if he's correct, and he was the expert looking at the evidence, that this injury had occurred much earlier than the theory that had been presented at trial, and indeed had occurred during a period of time that our client was not in Brownsville, but was in Memphis, Tennessee. He was 700 miles away. And then ultimately we had a hearing in December of 2013. There was essentially a week-long trial in Brownsville, where we put on evidence. We brought the experts. We brought the doctor who I just had talked about, who had done the work. A few months later, after the trial judge had the opportunity to review the transcripts and all of that evidence, she issued a ruling, which in Texas parlance is a recommendation to the Court of Criminal Appeals, that Mr. Velez get a new trial. So over the course of the first couple of days, they interviewed him, they interviewed the mother, and we have videotape of the interviews of the mother, and it was clear that the entire focus of the investigation was, what did that man do to your child? Why are you protecting him? Why are you standing up for him? Why aren't you telling us what he did? And almost badgering her to that point. The prosecution then worked out a plea agreement with the mother in return for her testifying at trial, and she got a much reduced sentence. She got out from under the possibility of a death sentence. Well, the obstacles to overturning a conviction are, as I've explained, there's a presumption that of the validity of a jury verdict. There is inertia. There are resources. Most criminal defendants who have been convicted simply do not have access to good, solid legal representation. They often didn't have access to good representation at the trial level. Our legal system is an adversarial system, and sometimes that gets taken much too far. And there are certainly prosecutors who have, over the years, found themselves in such an adversarial system that they forget that they are they are servants of the state, and their job is to do justice, even if that means not getting a conviction. Oh, there's so many things that the justice system is skewed so much in the direction of, if you have money, you get a good defense. So from the beginning of investigations, as I've talked about, there's too often a desire we need to develop evidence to get a conviction, rather than at least starting from the concept of, let's figure out what really happened here, and not that rush to judgment. We've got a criminal justice system that is tilted in the direction of folks with wealth, and I think it's a disgrace to the way that we handle, particularly in these most serious of cases, when they're contemplating putting someone to death on behalf of the state. Then I think the state is obligated to do everything it possibly can to be sure it gets it right.